We sat down with Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to get his take on this latest bill, also his thoughts on Biden's reversal on almost all of the Trump-era policies regarding immigration, and also where the congressman sees the future of the GOP. Obviously, Republicans just want to reopen. That's a stimulus package, like you've done in Florida with your governor. Reopening is the stimulus.
You're totally right. There is no government printing of cash that can ever do more for the American people than an open economy can do. Right now, Democrats are doing precisely what the Democrat whip Jim Clyburn said they would do. They are using the coronavirus to try to execute on every item on the liberal wish list. Now, you talked about money. We are printing money so fast right now. I worry long term about the status of the dollar as the global reserve currency, because we're doing the things that you would see devolving economies do, diminishing their currency. But it's not just how much money, just like you said, it's where it's going. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are using the coronavirus to pay back and pay off their political allies. Oftentimes governors and mayors in blue states where liberalism has really been bad for the economy. It's been bad for pension plans. It's been bad for budgeting. And even in local communities that are municipalities where they haven't managed their pension programs correctly, where they haven't managed their budgets, you see them now saying, well, as a result of coronavirus, we need all Americans to come and bail us out. And it's not just bailing them out. It's the moral hazard that creates. If we set the standard now that if you screw up, if you don't do right by your people, that we're going to go take money away from other people, or we're going to go devalue the savings of seniors in this country to backfill your bad decisions, we're going to get more bad decisions. That's why conservative Republicans are fighting for that open economy and against this bad bill. But I have to say, there's more than just money that is a problem in this legislation. Democrats are trying to execute on policies that would never prevail if they got their own dignity and their own review, but they're log rolling up things like the minimum wage, changes to the election system, changes to immigration law, and they're calling it all coronavirus response, and I think that is another troubling trend.
So we talk COVID relief, we talk about this money that's going to bail out blue states, and you made a very good point. This is not because COVID hurt them so bad with their shutdowns, which, by the way, they made the decisions to do these draconian-style lockdowns in states like New York, Michigan, California. The list goes on and on. This were states that were failing even before COVID. They had, whether they were in the black, red, whatever, they were failing. And so this money is going to go to those states, supposedly to help with COVID relief, but it's really going to the coffers of these cities and states who were not doing too well before that, correct?
Yeah, first they try to get the COVID money. Then the next step, they try to divorce that money from an actual requirement that it be spent on COVID. They want to spend it for their general budget shortfalls, for infrastructure, for revenue shortfalls, for diminished taxes. You know one thing that diminishes your tax revenue? When you close down your businesses. You don't let them open up and engage in free open commerce.
Yeah, you don't have taxes coming in your coffers in California, New York, because you've kept everything closed for 11 months. For crying out loud. Let's kind of pivot here into immigration, and this ties into really what's going on in Texas right now, too. You have a lot of border states, border mayors speaking up now on both sides of the aisle, by the way, going after Biden and his administration about his, once again, let's bring back catch and release, like under the Obama-Biden administration. He's now forcing, with an executive order, telling these border cities to let illegal immigrants, that's still the phrase I'll use, illegal aliens, out of jail, let them wait for their court date. Okay. While millions are without power, water, electricity, heat, you name it. I think the death toll is up to 15, 20 in Texas now. I just don't understand how more people aren't pushing back on that policy, and if the administration is so worried about COVID and bringing COVID into the country and helping Americans, how can you then say, well, let's open up the borders, let's release some of them in jail while you've got millions of Texans, thousands of them hurting right now?
Well, and the governor of Florida pointed out the hypocrisy from the Biden administration. They want to restrict travel in and out of Florida, and they don't even want to restrict travel in and out of our country. Yeah. At the border with Mexico. And it's really frustrating when you see all the progress we made during the Trump administration. I mean, you remember during the beginning of the Trump administration, we had tens of thousands of people every month just swarming the border. Donald Trump, his team, they made sure that we didn't have catch and release in our country, that people could seek asylum from Mexico. And you know what? When we caught them here, we took a lot of them and put them right on a plane back to Honduras, Guatemala, for them to wait there, because 90 3% of the people who we caught and released then never were showing back up at a trial to determine whether or not they'd made a legal asylum claim. What's really, really frustrating is that the Biden administration is now reversing those policies, which is spinning up the cartel activity to assemble these caravans in Central and South America. And then they're taking the resources that we had appropriated for the wall and they're reallocating them to welcome centers. I mean, they're repurposing the wall money to welcome centers where they're going to process through as many people as possible, put them out in our country, and that is cruel. It is cruel because it diminishes the wages of people who are already here in America, who are legally in our country. And it's also cruel because when you tell people that they're going to be treated better if they show up with a little baby, then they're going to show up with a little baby, whether those children are theirs or bought, sold, rented, trafficked.
So glad you pointed that out.
And it is heartbreaking to hear the stories of the children that we find over and over again in the arms of these cartels and smugglers being used like they're a fast pass at Disneyland. And it's dehumanizing and it's awful. Donald Trump had really ratcheted that down to almost a trickle. And now you have Joe Biden opening the floodgates to illegal immigration that will hurt Americans and it will hurt the human beings that get put in that flow.
We had on the former deputy director of ICE maybe a week or so ago on the show, and he said that just in the last couple of weeks or month or so, there were 3,500 children in the Rio Grande area that came across, all 3,500, none of them coming with their parents. They're coyotes, they're drug dealers, they're whatever, like you said, bringing them over. So when you hear about the kids in cages that were built by the Obama administration, most of those kids that are separated, they weren't separated from their families, they were separated from the horrible people that were bringing them over to gain access to our country.
Well, I mean, my body just shivers to think about what life would be like for those children who are used as chattels in a system, not to benefit their life, not to benefit even their family, but to benefit these cartels. Because you know who really wants just a whole lot of human beings swirling around Central and South America? The cartels, because that allows them to move people and to move drugs into our country and have just a far more permissible environment to operate. And that is the fact. And unfortunately, those people are going to benefit from Joe Biden's policies. And it's not like we don't know what to do. We know the right answer is to reform asylum laws, to have physical barriers, and to stop the just horrible policy of catch and release that now Joe Biden is embracing with both arms.
Speaking of Joe Biden's administration, you stopped into our studios. We really appreciate it. So I think you see the value in OANN and other kind of up-and-coming conservative-type networks. How about how the media has been treating the Biden administration since, well, we can go back to the campaign trail. Let's just talk about since January 20th. I mean, we see gaffe after gaffe, lie after lie. No one is taking him to task. He just had this town hall meeting where he literally lied about no vaccines being ready when he walked into the Oval Office, even though he's had both of his shots under the Trump administration. We have proof of that. But they don't call him on anything. Doesn't that just frustrate you? That where is journalism? Where has it gone? Because is he just going to get a free pass for 4 years?
Well, I mean,
not with me anyway.
Yeah, Donald Trump every day had to face a pack of tigers when he faced the media, and Joe Biden gets a cat bath from them. That was not a town hall he had. That was an infomercial, and they're not even selling a product that's all that interesting in Joe Biden. But there are going to be Biden scandals that are coming up. When you look at the way the Biden family has treated the United States government as a mechanism to enrich themselves, to build equity positions in companies, to be able to trade on their name and on our country's credibility for their own benefit, they're not going to stop. The question is whether or not we have the diligence to hold them accountable. Now, even when Donald Trump was president, we had a Department of Justice that had functionally gone AWOL, that had operated more as a political entity than as a true administrator of justice. And so I'm troubled when you see like Hunter Biden's lawyer's law partner going over to head the criminal division at the Department of Justice. That's not comforting. When I see Peter Strzok's wife in a position of enforcement when it deals with the stock market and securities and exchanges, that doesn't make me feel like they're depoliticizing these entities. And so it is going to take the strong investigative journalism that this network has advanced. It's going to take a lot of the reporting like you guys did during the Ukraine hoax. I mean, like, that was so groundbreaking what OANN did to expose that flawed impeachment, and I think we're really going to need that pressure kept up, and hopefully you guys will be the one doing it.
We're going to keep doing it. I'm scared when I hear you say that, but I'm also scared when you see people like Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe, They're being used as correspondents on MSNBC and CNN every week, like they're experts in their fields, when we know they were corrupt as hell. I mean, we've seen the evidence come out, the Horowitz report, everything from the Russia hoax scandal, where they threw everybody under the bus and made lies up, from Carter Page and up to the president and General Flynn. I'm worried because the American people then are just getting this funneled to them by the mainstream media that these guys are legitimate.
Well, let's call
And
them
they're
out.
not.
Well, look,
I call them out every day.
We all
Trust
know,
me.
We know who we're talking about. We're talking about CNN
Yes, we are.
specifically, and what CNN is doing is they're covering up their own complicit behavior in these efforts to destabilize the presidency of Donald Trump without evidence. You see, CNN went out there and allowed their talent to peddle lies each and every night on their air. And so now, to cover up their own corruption, they're hiring some of the very people that initiated those lies and initiated those flawed investigations to come out and give this imprimatur of credibility for a network that doesn't deserve any.
Yeah, Matt, I want to wrap things up with where are we going from here? And I mean that in the sense of where is the GOP going from here? Who do you think is going to break out as leaders? And I want to say this with giving you a pat on the back, because I hear from a lot of folks that we have on my program on this network, you know, you are not a rising star, you're a star in the party right now. People have high hopes for you. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see the party going? Where do you see Donald Trump going? And what are we going to have to do to solidify? Because right now, yes, the Democrats may be scattered between their old school Kennedy Dems, a mainstream Dem, and the crazy left-wingers they have in their party, but the GOP's fractured right now too. Well, so where are we going to go?
You put your finger right on the pulse of it. We are having an identity crisis right now in the Republican Party, because there are a bunch of people who want to go back to the days of the Romneys, the Bushes, the Cheneys. I don't want to go back. I believe that the America First mantra has been a successful one. It has brought more people to our movement. It has given us more energy than we ever could have hoped for during kind of the country club days of republicanism of yesteryear. I hope that Donald Trump runs for president again in 2024. If he does, I'll be campaigning right alongside him like I did in the last two presidential elections. And when we look for voices and the next generation of leaders in our party, I don't think we should just be looking at Washington, D.C. I look at my governor, Ron DeSantis, who's come out and said, we're going to trust our people. We're going to have an open economy. We're going to have low taxes. We're going to invest in a clean environment and good education, but in a way that doesn't grow government excessively. And that's one of the reasons why people are moving overwhelmingly to the state of Florida. People do vote with their feet. 1,300 of them every day are moving to the state of Florida. And so I think that we're going to have to look around the country for some of that inspiration for our movement. But hey, at the end of the day, you and I both know DJT, he sets the tone, he sets the message, and I think he'll still do that for years to come.
Yeah, and he's living rent-free in all these liberals' minds. I love it, and I love that phrase. Matt, we want to thank you so much for stopping by. I will say this, we need more leaders like you who, as veterans, we learned when we served our country in the military, you put service before self. And one thing that I always say is I want to see more citizen legislators, not these career lifer politicians.
Amen. Amen to term limits. And with
Yes.
that, know that, you know, these aren't supposed to be life sentences in public office. They're not supposed to be everything that defines you. Yeah, I think you look at folks who get in, do what they can, punch out, and live a good life as great models. This is Congressman Matt Gaetz. If you liked that video, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and join us on our daily podcast, Hot Takes with Matt Gaetz, on your favorite podcast listening platform.